Templum Inundatio and Turris Ascensionem are two games made by a single creator named Venomshank 40. Both games are stylized after the old Roblox aesthetic, though given the trend of modern Roblox horror games and classic Roblox design, it's entirely up in the air if it'll be of decent quality or just someone smacking generic lighting and shadow to completely mismatch and clash present and past in one package. Venomshank 40 is a creator on Roblox creating stylized games in the retro formats. If you look through his profile, his games follow a trend of linear horror/adventure style games with a hint of foreign language in them. Sometimes it's Japanese or Greek for some reason, though he seems to have lately taken up a spin on plastering Latin everywhere. I'm personally not a huge fan of having to tab out and translate stuff, but I'll do it anyways, I don't care, whatever. But that's probably just nonsense. It's easy to judge a book based on creators' behavior, and as most people say, never judge a book by its cover, which is a rule people online almost never obey because the cover of a game has the words weird, strict, and dad. People are gonna click on that. I'm Breadian, and I talk about niche Roblox games, and today we're looking at Venomshank 40's horror games. Some of the weirdest ones I've played on Roblox so far. The first game is called Templum Inundatio. From Latin, it means temple flood, apparently. I don't know, that's what Google Translate says, and we all know how accurate Google Translate is. The translation in the description reads, "Ocean flows like plant propagation." Apparently the title wasn't enough for more Latin to be inserted. You start out as a weird, misshapen guy made out of water. Your entire body is misshapen, your head is misshapen, your limbs are misshapen. Hell, even your entire body is disproportional. Pretty impressive that your body can hold its weight. Oh, so that's what they mean when they say it's all water weight. Anyways, Templum setting and gameplay is pretty simple. You're a water guy in a water world going into a water temple that's been overrun by moss, I think. Entering the temple, you see a giant statue of some random Robloxian. And finding a crowbar, which, by the way, the game doesn't tell you about aside from random graffiti on the wall, lets you break in and go deeper into the temple. Pay no attention to the fact that the statue just randomly fucks off right after you obtain the crowbar. Totally not sus. Occasionally, while playing the game, Templum will overlay your screen with a dim filter, making everything look a little darker, like Seek just constantly splooging on your face. This is pretty annoying, especially once you descend further into the temple, so have fun getting blindsided like every 5 seconds. Deeper into the temple, you get your first, and technically, only weapon, a fireball. Though it does have its own weird, creepy face, like your character, and it's mostly useful for burning away moss. Exploring the temple, you're greeted with even more graffiti that either tells you what to do or explains what the hell went on down here. Apparently, at some point, the temple was so full of your fellow water buddies, but something went wrong down here and led to Yggdrasil, the god of mosses in this game's world, to consume the underbelly of the temple, resulting in all of the water buddies being absolutely munched. Although some graffiti on the wall implies that the water people kind of wanted that to happen. Wonderful. Anyways, you gotta use your dead buddies' bodies as obstacles to get over certain puzzles. Yes, you have to literally use the corpses of your dead friends as a platform. There are no checkpoints in this game, so if you die once, you are forced to start all over again. Also, the game crashes itself after giving you a fake moderator's note, so you're forced to whip out Task Manager to continue on. There's a puzzle near the beginning of the temple where you have to push your dead water buddy's frozen corpse into a frozen pit of ice, sliding across the room. Before that, you have to push him across a tiny bridge and clear a bunch of wooden obstacles in your way. It's actually pretty easy to get soft lock here, since the intended method is to push the water buddy onto the ice, jump on him, and then burn the moss blocking the way. You can, however, burn the moss too early and basically trap yourself, or accidentally get your dead buddy's corpse stuck in a corner, making it impossible to pull him out. Amazing game design right there. Oh, but Breadian, it's intentional. Being annoying on purpose is worse than being annoying by accident. At some point, you'll encounter moss zombies, and you're forced to use fireballs against them. I'm literally Leon S. Kennedy. They're not particularly threatening, they deal little damage, and they're basically just basic Roblox zombies, but you might get caught off guard by them. Later on, you fall and lose your fireball weapon and are forced to continue on to the ending while being chased by the moss zombies. Near the end, you're forced into a maze where moss slabs will shoot out of the ground. I don't know if these even damage you, so I'm just assuming that it's there to catch you off guard like a cheap jump scare. Anyways, you ascend a set of stairs and confront the weird moss god, Yggdrasil, and are eaten for your efforts enduring the temple. The end screen reads, "In your last moments, you saw God. After being absorbed, it called for more. The oceans outside trembled and quaked for the next clueless victim to be awakened. The badge you get for the ending reads, Capta Oceani, Yggdrasil Accipit. It roughly translates to captured by the ocean, Yggdrasil accepts. A rough translation because a direct translation makes it weird. There's also a secret ending. It's a little faster than completing the game, though you're forced to deal with a couple new entities. After grabbing the crowbar, there's a secret purple fireball weapon that you can get that's outside the temple. Grabbing both of them, instead of going deeper in the temple, you just walk out of the border walls until you see wooden planks. Break them and enter a village. One of the houses will be open, you grab this weird sponge thing inside of it. Once you've grabbed it, weird floating sponges with eyes will appear and you'll have to book it back to the temple while being chased by the sponge eyes. Jump onto the pillar where the statue used to be on and you'll be met with a new end screen. You broke the rules, disobeyed the gods, you took the artifact, you awoken the unholy, absorbing all water, Yargslag begins a new age. So either way, you're basically just appeasing a plant god or a sponge god. Playing this game in a single sitting is pretty difficult. Given that you have no checkpoints and are forced to do puzzles that could potentially lock you out from continuing on further unless you restart the game, you're likely going to end up replaying until you beat either the first or second ending. This isn't really good gameplay, it's straight up bad design. The game crashing after you either beat the game or die is also unnecessary and annoying as hell. Why should I spend the time whipping up Task Manager to close the Roblox tab? Why make it much more annoying to just close the game when I fail or win the game? You know, part of me thinks that this was deliberate in order to keep these games mysterious and hidden from the public eye, as they're definitely not very friendly to the player. I was never a big fan of these MUGEN style games. You know, the retro Roblox games that crash your game and play extremely loud noises when you die. I find them not very fun or satisfying to play, but they are fun to read about to be completely fair, and I'm happy that they have an audience, though I'm not part of it. The atmosphere and Lovecraft-inspired story is pretty cool. The ambiance and sound design do add to the general uneasiness of the temple, which is nice and puts you on edge for most of the game. I love when horror games edge you the entire time. The second game is called Turris Ascensionem. The translation from Latin is a little more ambiguous on this one because Google Translate isn't very reliable when it comes to translating a dead language, as in a language that has no native speakers. It says, "You are taking the Ascension." Notably, the thumbnail spells Turris with an extra hard R, so taking that different spelling and inputting into Google Translate reads Ascension Tower, which is probably what the creator had intended to say. The name of the game is a bit of a mouthful, so I might just call it Ascensionem or just the non-Latin version because I don't know how to pronounce Latin shit. Ascensionem sort of deviates from Templum because it can be seen as a bait game, since it's split into two sections, a generic obby-like platformer and the second part being a horror maze section that takes 2 billion years to finish. I exaggerate that completion time, mostly if you fall under two categories. A, not good with horror games. B, have no idea what you're doing. Or C, really fed up with Roblox horror games lately and have no patience. By the way, I'm personally letter C. Sorry to throw that in here. In the case of Beta, the person who recorded some of the footage, both are checked off for him. And he ended up recording 53 minutes of the game. Most of the time just hiding. In his own words, I'm not bullying him. Also, videos on Ascensionem are around 10 to 20 minutes, with the longest being 40 minutes. Ascensionem starts out with you in a blank tower. You're a random Robloxian dude working for a construction company, and your coworker asks you to cover his shift. By shift, I mean to climb up all of the safety-violating obstacles to finish whatever he left unfinished at the top. He tells you something important when climbing, and that the trusses are non-collidable, described as walk through by the guy. The trusses look solid instead of being partially transparent, so you're bound to get confused. Gameplay-wise, it's already on a fairly rough start, though it compensates with the somewhat calming presentation of the game and the nice choice of background music, which is Forest Interlude from Donkey Kong Country 2 on a short loop, I think. Climbing the tower itself can get pretty frustrating. Although you have a higher jump height, your walk speed is maintained, so overestimating yourself during the initial climb is pretty easy. As I said before, the trusses look solid, but are non-collidable, so don't try using the trusses to climb, or as platforms. You'll just fall through because readability was apparently something the developer forgot. There's pretty much nothing notable here during the initial climb, but to actually beat the game, you're forced to ascend the tower. There's no checkpoint either, so have fun making mistakes and falling straight down to the beginning. Upon reaching the top, you'll be met with an end screen of an eye looking down at the player, Reading. Ascended the spire. I wish you were all here to see my achievement. I miss you all, but don't worry. I'll be there soon. Back to work I go. Now, with the initial climb done, the game forces itself to crash. Simply having your player get kicked isn't enough for the creator, so he resorts to just crashing your game whenever you're done with it. So, again, pretty unnecessary if anything. You'll have to whip out Task Manager just to get rid of the Roblox game window once you're done. Again. Unlocking the climbing ending is important for the second, more serious ending though, and you'll finally get access to the lower sections of the game. Immediately upon descending the tower, the tone of the game basically does a massive 180 turn. You could probably call this a type of bait and switch game, where the game is presented as a calm, climbing experience, but then reveals itself to have a dark side underneath the surface when you walk deeper into it. Anyways, once you descend, you're teleported into a section where once you go deeper, you're introduced to the mechanic of hiding inside of lockers away from a weird reptile-like monster. The monster is the only thing in the game that sort of deviates from the retro Roblox art style that was commonplace throughout Ascension. Believe it or not, once that's done, you go further deep and are teleported to yet another place. This time, it's an incredibly dark maze set inside a series of rooms and hallways. If you thought the climbing section was tedious, get ready, because right here's where all the slow burn really happens. What you're supposed to do is just follow a quiet buzzing sound that's emitted by keys. However, most keys are fake. Yet you have to collect every key in order before you beat the game. Yep, even though most of the keys to the exit are fucking fake, you still have to grab them before the real key spawns. While you deal with that, you're also forced to hide from the monster who's clearly pissed off because he had to pay rent for a tower that hasn't finished construction yet. This part of the game quickly turns from a tense experience to a slow burn because of just how many keys you have to collect. 5, probably. It goes from having a pretty uneasy atmosphere mixed in with the familiar old Roblox style architecture to, when the hell does this game end? Having to find keys in a fairly big maze while the lighting's so goddamn contrasted that you literally have to stick to the walls just to see what you're doing. If you play on a low volume, either because you hate sounds or loud jump scares, or you have tinnitus, you're going to struggle, even hearing the keys make the vibrating sound. You're at least given space to avoid the monster since it makes a loud stepping noise whenever it moves, while you're just shining a massive red light. Also, it plays a sort of ambient horror noise when you're near it, so you know it's coming. Upon grabbing the final key and locating the exit, your character leaves the building, and a classic Roblox song, Awakening by Positively Dark, washes over you as the scenery changes from a dark, dreary, and claustrophobic complex to approaching a shining eye in the distance, with other towers filling the location. Once you walk far enough, you'll be met with an end screen, reading, "I did it. I took it head on. I survived it. I hope to still meet you all soon. Time to push on." If you die to the monster before completing the maze though, you'll get an end screen reading, "I gave you life, I gave you soul, I gave you fuck me, dude. Oh my god. I made you inanimum. I gave you will, I gave you an escape." Oh yeah, the game crashes too. It's pretty much the same case as in Templum where, whether you win or lose, you're forced to whip out Task Manager just to close the Roblox tab, because the concept of letting the player leave the game like normal is apparently beyond Venomshank 40. I get that it's a nice artistic touch, especially since there's effort into making a pretty convincing fake moderator note. But does it really have to fucking crash? Generally, the game's better than Templum in many regards. The initial climb isn't tense or uneasy or whatever, but it's a nice calming game you can play before trying to descend the tower. The choice of music is a nice touch, which honestly makes it easy to forget that Ascensionem is actually a horror game. During the Descension maze, though, is incredibly difficult and intense in its own right, with the dark, saturated hallways making it difficult to navigate and find the keys. The monster making noises indicating whether it's near or not also makes the dreary atmosphere a lot more oppressive, which is a nice touch. That being said, the climbing part gets annoying if you're terrible at parkour or obby games in Roblox. It's easy to fall, and given the lack of checkpoints despite there being a badge that awards you for reaching the halfway point, you'll be forced to do the climb again if you slip up and fall back to the starting level Kirby style. The horror maze also gets incredibly annoying the longer you play it. It's hard to pinpoint where exactly the keys are beyond the sounds they make, and you have to collect multiple fake keys before the real one spawns in sequential order, so it feels like the playtime is being padded out for longer than necessary just for some dog shit maze. While being chased by a creature that, if I'm not wrong, is intentionally programmed to roam near the player's area rather than patrolling random locations. It also feels a little unfair when the monster just sets up camp near you and you're perpetually stuck in a locker. Also, the dark saturated light isn't really good for the hallways that have no light. You literally have to stick to the walls if you want to feel safe. Also, so what's with Venomshank 40 saying and representing in both games? What do they mean? There's some sort of symbolism here and there. It might come as a surprise that these two games by Venomshank 40 actually have deeper meaning behind just faux retro aesthetics. Maybe not as deep as your average 5 Nights at Freddy's game, but it still has some sort of symbolism. Or something deep. Templum is a little hard to determine what it's meant to be an allegory of, but it's easy to see how it was heavily inspired by H.P. Lovecraft's Eldritch horror. Specifically Cthulhu, due to the significance of water, mosses, zombie-like monsters, and the gods involved. However, aside from visual inspiration, Templum doesn't draw direct parallels to Lovecraftian horror in terms of writing. Instead, creating fictional gods like Yggdrasil or Yarrikslag to contextually fit the game's lore. The god at the end of the normal game is probably the Yggdrasil one, whose name is actually based on the Tree of Life in Norse mythology. I'm not too sure why the name was chosen, but given that moss is a type of plant life, and the weird water people being consumed by this entity, it might have to do something with the cycle of life. The weird water people willingly surrender themselves, and this implies that this is a cycle that they're willing to put themselves through. However, in the sponge ending, you awaken some type of sponge god called Yarrikslag, who threatens to drain all water and water-related life forms, including you, which would effectively kill Yggdrasil, because he depends on them to feed, and this would bring upon a new age of some sort. Given that Yggdrasil in Templum is evocative of Cthulhu and the presence of the rival sponge god of Yarrikslag to drain all water life, Templum's own symbolism might just be fun references to H.P. Lovecraft's works, an exploration into eldritch horrors, which is something that's rarely ever seen in Roblox games. Modern Roblox games are mostly just generic slop, or an attempt at mimicking Residence Massacre's noob monster and retro Roblox art style, so it's nice to see a change of pace there. They took a simple conflict regarding water, plants, and sponges and turned it into cosmic horror. Turris Ascensionem Symbolism. Ascensionem's case is a lot more interesting and easier to catch on. Given your character is working for some in-universe Robloxian construction company, your character often talks about your achievements and how they miss someone, probably referring to friends or family, and the implication he's being swamped by work. According to the "back to work I go" quote, this could be symbolically referring to the toughness of daily life as we grow up. If we can't manage it, we soon find ourselves becoming increasingly obsessed with work and, consequently, unable to find the time to spend with loved ones. It's poignant in how the character expresses how he wishes he could share his achievements, which further hammers the point of how life gets so busy for some people that it leaves a void in their social lives. It's something that affects everyone at some point in our lives, even if our circumstances are entirely different. In the secret ending path, you're forced to escape with a monster roaming the halls. Being killed by the monster gives you a message about free will, escape, life, soul, and most importantly, inadium, meaning inanimate. By definition, inanimate generally refers to lifelessness, so it might be referring to the player character's death, since some could consider death as an escape. Upon completing the secret ending, with your character finally leaving the tower, he talks about how he took some sort of challenge that's been bothering him, head on, and survived. He talks of how he's willing to meet all of his loved ones soon, and how it's time to push on, which gives implication to two theories. One, the monster is a representation of self-doubt, isolationism, and obsession with work life. 2. The descent from the top of the tower and subsequent escape of the monster could be a representation of the player character finally finding the time in his busy work life to spend with friends and family. Thus, he survived his inner demons and walks free. Getting caught by the monster, though, results in the death of the player with references to life, death, and escape, which could either be representative of the player character either surrendering to the monotony and isolation of his life, or, worst case scenario, committing a word I can't say on YouTube. After being unable to handle the pressure of work life, thus the monster granting him inadium and an escape. There's also something about the eyes in both endings that look down on the player. I'm not sure what this means, but given the player is already saying something positive in the presence of those eyes, could probably be relating to the whole feeling of freedom. How the first ending's meant to be how the player character's own freedom is far out of reach, and the second ending being the player character finally be able to walk down the proverbial sunset into freedom. The usage of Positively Dark's Awakening track to convey a feeling of freedom adds to all of that. Wow, what a beautiful yap sesh. I think that's what the kids call it now, sorry. Now, I'm not sure if Venomshank 40 exactly intended there to be a Roblox lore analysis when it came to Turris Ascensionem's atmosphere, Sure, Templum seemed like a fun exploration into Lovecraft-inspired horror, so as far as I know, I could just be looking too deeply into Turris Ascensionem's symbolism. Fuck, dude, that's a mouthful. However, the heavy references to the player character's life, and after spending a stupidly long time in the maze, could be representative of all I just said. Venomshank 40's two games, Templum Inundatio and Turris Ascensionem, are on a sort of weird seesaw of quality and gameplay. On one hand, both games are visually based on retro Roblox aesthetics and do a fairly decent job at conveying Roblox's old art style, without using complex meshes that could contradict the art style, like weird strict ads inconsistencies. They both also have some sort of interesting levels of symbolism, the deeper you look into both of these games. Either it be Lovecraftian horror or complicated nature of everyday life. Templum, however, isn't just really appealing. The gameplay drags on a bit and forces you to restart from the very beginning if you fuck it up even once. It's really annoying, especially given so by the fact that Venomshank 40 insists on crashing the game every time you die or complete the game. The Lovecraft-inspired aspects are interesting, I guess, even if it's just surface level. Ascensionem is, in my opinion, just a lot better than what Templum offers. Sure, it's a bait-and-switch game and still has Templum's annoying crashing gimmick every time you beat the game and die, but the lighting and visuals complement each other well, and the implied premise is also pretty interesting from a symbolic standpoint. The second part of the game, which is the descending maze, is still a complete bitch to deal with, and pads out the gameplay for probably longer than what Venomshank 40 intended, which is, again, pretty annoying. Also, some of the Latin is kind of stupid the more I think about it. Anyways, I'm Breadian, and I talk about niche Roblox games. Thanks for watching. Also, this video is interesting because it was a collaboration of multiple people. Be sure to check out their channels in the description. Alright, thanks for watching. Bye.